Well, we welcome you to a very special edition of really overlooking the hurricane season, the tropical storms. I'm meteorologist Chris Murphy, and joined by meteorologist Jessie Uppal and Mark Robinson. Of course, Mark Robinson was in some of the most intense hurricanes of the season this year, so we'll get to all of that. In this particular segment, we're going to focus on Hurricane Ian. Now, Hurricane Ian, of course, made a huge impact in Florida, very costly, very devastating as well. So, Jessie Uppal, let's start with you, Jess. You were tracking the storm, of course. What sort of tipped you off that this was going to be a storm to reckon with?
Days leading up to it, Chris and Mark, you know, I remember the whole state of Florida was under a state of emergency leading up to it. We were expecting it to intensify at such an incredible pace, and it's because all the ingredients were there. We're in peak hurricane season. The ocean, the sea surface temperatures were so warm. There were low wind shear. There was an area of low wind shear where Hurricane Ian was expected to really strengthen. And I remember seeing the imagery from space, satellite imagery leading up to the actual landfall, the lightning associated with Ian, and right within the eye wall was just intense. Something I've never seen from a meteorological perspective, and I wouldn't even imagine what that was like in person.
Yeah, well, that was the one thing I was sort of smiling there, because that was the only hurricane I've ever worried about being struck by lightning. And we had one bolt that hit across the street from it, and I've never worried. This thing went bam! Like it was like being in the middle of a thunderstorm and being too close to lightning. I was not worried, and then I was very worried about that.
So you've got the wind, you've got the storm surge,
yeah.
You've got the flooding rains, and then you have the lightning on top of that. So,
yeah.
So it was unusual. And was this kind of lightning where you mentioned like loud thunder, or was this like frequent nonstop lightning?
Well, you know what? You could actually hear it as the sort of the eye wall approached. We started to hear the rumbles of thunder, and you sometimes hear that. It's not that unusual, but then to actually hear it almost constant and then start to see it, that was weird. And I knew that at that point we were dealing with something very different than I'd seen before.
You know, something else that I want to touch up on was that, and this was very making the rounds on social media, was that the water getting sucked out of these bays that we saw that. So, Mark, like, first of all, how unusual is that, and what causes that to happen?
I've only seen it in two hurricanes. And ironically, it was both sort of hurricanes coming up the west coast of Florida. And yeah, we walked down to the edge and you just watched the beach appear and then the mud flats appear, and it was like, what is going on here? And that's just because it's just the water's got to go somewhere, and so it's being pulled away from that area and being piled up, and where it was getting piled up is down in Fort Myers.
Well, absolutely. And you know what, funny enough, that's one of the things that we're going to be touching on throughout this, is that the tracking or the forecasting of Ian versus the forecasting for Fiona was two very different beasts. One was an almost perfect forecast, and one was keeping you up in the guessing for a long time. Mark, last word with you quickly. We're going to be talking about some of the things that you will remember most in Ian. Maybe just a quick little teaser. What are a couple of them?
Oh, wow. Just the winds on the backside of the eye wall were just, I've never seen. The destruction. At the same time, also the hopefulness of getting down there and getting everything cleaned up. There's so many people trying to help.
All right. Well, you did great work on that one. And Jessie, when you and I come back, we're going to be discussing, amongst other things, the hurricane season as a whole, because for a while there, it looked like it was going to be very, very quiet.